Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. All right, everybody, welcome back. And I am joined, every Friday at 3 o'clock. Miss Candace Plattor is with me. Welcome back to the show, Miss Candace.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
So, love with boundaries. If you can just tell the audience, in case they're new and don't know about this awesome business that you run, in a way to help people, let us know about Love with Boundaries, please.
Sure. Love with Boundaries is the company that I formed a long time ago, probably about 30 years ago. I'm an addiction therapist, and I work out of Vancouver, Canada, but I work worldwide on Zoom, working specifically with the families of people who are addicted, because there's so little help out there for them. There's a lot of help out there for the addicts, but there's very little help for the loved ones. So if you're a loved one, please stay with us. If you know a loved one, call them and tell them to be on the show, to come on and listen. Love with Boundaries is a counseling service, and we help families learn how to differentiate between enabling and helping their addicts so that changes can actually happen in your family.
And I love the model that you have brought to us about how there's a difference between what traditionally people are supposed to believe. They have a disease that there's nothing that can be done. It's the same as like a Crohn's disease, something that happens to your body, or something that you have no control over. Can you kind of explain a little bit more about it? Because I think you're so right on with that, and you've been through it. So
thank you. I have been through it. Yeah, I'm still going. I still go through it. I guess I should let the audience know, if you don't know much about me, that I'm 35 years clean and sober. And somebody said to me, 35 consecutive years? And it's like, yep, 35 consecutive years clean and sober. Right before that, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. Most people know what that is, but it's an inflammatory bowel disease that's very
painful, right?
And debilitating, and very embarrassing. It's all full of stuff that people don't want to talk about.
Right.
I'm okay talking about it today, but what the doctors did back in the 70s, when I was first diagnosed, almost 50 years ago, addiction wasn't on the radar. I don't think they knew what they were doing to me, but what they did was they prescribed all of this really addictive medication for me: Valium, Ativan, those kinds of drugs, and opioids. So I was getting codeine and Demerol and morphine and OxyContin and all of that stuff as much as I wanted, as often as I wanted. And guess what? I became addicted just like anybody else would. And
Big
so
surprise,
for about
right?
15, sorry?
Big surprise, right? When they hand you all these.
Yeah, big surprise. But because addiction wasn't on the radar, I had no idea that I was addicted. I just knew that my life was totally falling apart and becoming very, very small. And I was very, very depressed, to the point of being suicidal, of thinking about all the pills that I had and how I could make use of them.
Right.
So this was a really difficult time in my life, and I reached a bottom with that. And so I had a choice to make about, am I going to live? Am I going to die? Should I stay or should I go?
Yeah.
That age-old question that we all go through with something. For me, it was about whether to stay alive or not. And obviously, I made the choice to stay alive because I'm here, and I'm grateful for that every day. I picked up the phone and I called the Vancouver crisis line. I'm in Vancouver, Canada. And I I just decided I was going to learn how to live instead of taking my own life. I came pretty close. I had enough pills. I knew how to do it. I knew how to time it so nobody would find me. You know, it
Wow.
was scary. But when I started to learn about addiction, it took me a little while to learn that I was actually an addict. And when I heard that term addict, when I learned about that, it was it was a relief for me because at least I knew what it was, and
Okay.
I knew what I started to learn what I could do about it. Um, so I started going to 12-step programs. This was back in 1987, and it was really the only game in town. There just weren't other recovery groups to go to. There really wasn't anything else. So I started going to that, and um, I went for about the first 10 years of my recovery. It really helped me. It basically saved my life. But as time went on, I started as my brain fog started to clear,
Mhm.
and I was actually listening to what was being said in these meetings and in the readings that would happen at the beginning of each meeting. Anybody's been to 12-step meetings, you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. Um, what they tell you is that you have a disease, you have the disease of addiction, and that you're powerless over this disease, and that you're going to relapse because that's a normal and natural part of recovery. That's what they say. um, and basically you have to go to meetings for the rest of your life or you're going to relapse. And I started really looking at this at 10 years clean and thinking, wait a minute, I'm not powerless over this. I'm 10 years clean. I make that choice every day. And I started to look at choice and about how, we as addicts, we don't choose to become addicts. I don't think anybody does that. Nobody says, "Oh gee, I think it'll be fun to be an addict in
Yeah. It
this
sounds like
lifetime.
fun.
Let's do that."
Yeah.
So, but once we're in the addiction, we have a choice about whether to stay there or whether to move into some kind of active recovery. And I had chosen recovery, and I had chosen it for 10 years. And I knew that I wasn't powerless over it. I also knew that I have a disease. I have a medical disease that doesn't have a cure. I try really hard to get rid of Crohn's. It doesn't quite work that way. Goes into remission, comes out of remission.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm much better now because I take much better care of myself, but I still have the illness.
Hmm.
With addiction, it's a really different thing. The reason I think that scientists and other people talk about addiction as a disease is because there's brain involvement. So they think that it's a brain disease. But there's brain involvement in every single thing we do. There's brain involvement when we blink our eyes.
Yeah.
There's brain involvement with everything. So that doesn't necessarily mean that addiction is a disease. And the difference between addiction and Crohn's, one of the major differences, is that you can get rid of addiction. All you have to do is stop using
Right.
and make the choice to stop using. As difficult as it is sometimes, to keep making that choice to stop using, and then you're done with addiction. But of course, it's not that simple. It's not that easy. You have to do some inner work to find out why you needed to use that addiction in the first place, because it's really not about the addiction. It's about the pain that's underneath the addiction
Hmm.
and why people use that. Um, but we can kick addiction to the curb. All you got to do is make a choice to not use or drink or shop excessively or game all night or
Right. Right. Substitute whatever it is, that can be
whatever it is. Yeah.
substitute, whatever. But
And so thank you. So what I if you're a loved one and you're listening, what I really want you to understand is that if you have an addict who's still in active addiction, they are making a choice to be there. And you are so important in this whole equation as the loved one. There are things you actually can do that will help, and things that you can stop doing that may be hurting, that may be keeping the addict stuck in the addiction. You can influence your addict so much if you know the right things to do. And I am living proof that addicts can change, because I have not always been the person you see here today.
Right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
Candace, what I don't think I've ever asked you, but I wanted to today, is when you were going through this, what was your support system like? How did your family treat you?
Yeah. Well, my family was not, I will say that growing up in my family was not a picnic.
Okay,
My parents were educators, they were workaholics, they had their own addictions aside from that one. They didn't give a lot of time and attention to myself or my brother. Um, and when I went into recovery, um, they, you know, they may have been enabling me in some ways, but really they weren't all that interested in what was going on with me. Narcissistic mother, self-absorbed father, that kind of thing.
I see.
They really weren't that interesting. And when I went into a rehab center, um, I remember that we had a family day. Many treatment centers, rehab centers have those where the family comes and, you know, for a day or a weekend.
Right.
Everybody else in the center, there were probably another 25 people. Everybody else, their family came. My family didn't.
Uh, was that a shot to you? Was it a
So
kick in the stomach?
it it was a kick in the stomach. It was absolutely a kick in the stomach. I remember my mother saying to me, "I don't think I'm going to come because it's not going to be very pleasant." And so that's what I grew up with.
I see.
So when I say that I made a choice without any support from my family at all.
Because if you had
I
a cop out,
I
you had every
decided.
reason to stub your toe, as they say, or whatever. You had every reason or excuse in the book to do so, but you didn't.
That's right. I did for a long time. I did for 15 years, without actually knowing that I was, using addiction. But yeah, it was not an easy time.
Right.
So, um, yeah, so, when I work with families where the addicts have people who really, really love them and want them to recover so badly and will do practically anything they can have to do that to help them. um, Sometimes I tell the addicts, you're really fortunate. Not everybody has had that,
Right. Right.
so don't take it for granted, and stop your manipulation. And they may not be perfect parents, they may not be perfect in whatever they're doing, but or siblings, whatever, but they love you and they show it.
That's important to hear for people to hear that.
Yeah,
If this,
yeah,
you get more honest than that. Let me go and
yeah.
see what the audience has to say. Thank you for sharing, by the way. That's very moving, very powerful. Uh, I think that's anybody who has someone with an addiction. Hearing that, I believe, will help definitely. And how do people get a hold of you if they're in that situation?
They can go to lovewithboundaries.com. I call it Love with Boundaries because we need to love our addicted people. We need to love them, but we need to love them with boundaries. Your addicts need you so much. They need you, but they need you to be healthy. And being healthy means setting healthy boundaries, self-respecting boundaries, boundaries that will help the addict come out of addiction. So it's lovewithboundaries .com, and we offer a free 30-minute consultation, free, and no strings attached at all. You
Awesome.
tell us a little bit about what's going on for you. We tell you how we work. If it's a fit, we move forward.
Got it. Awesome. Mr. Producer, what do you got for us?
Oh, your first anonymous here wants to know, Does it take a long time for an addict to be around the substance they were addicted to and not relapse?
That's such a great question, and hi to you, anonymous. I'm glad you didn't use your name if that felt uncomfortable for you. It it does take a little while, you know. It's what happens for addicts is they need to find new playgrounds and new playmates, because if they're around the substance or the behavior before they have some recovery under their belt, before they know and have some self-awareness about themselves and why they've been hurting themselves, they're just going to keep hurting themselves. You know,
Yeah.
they're going to find excuses. um, Anything can be an excuse. A broken shoelace can be an excuse. And so when a family is trying to support an addict or an alcoholic, especially somebody with substance abuse issues, if if it if they can, and it's such a good idea, um, to not have those substances around when the addict is visiting you or living with you. If you're not an alcoholic and you don't have to have alcohol in your home, don't have alcohol in your home.
Yeah.
It's a respectful way to help an addict recover, you know.
Yeah.
And this is especially true as the holiday
It's the
season
holidays. Yeah.
approaches. A
Right.
lot, a lot of people are thinking, well, we want to be able to have a glass of wine with dinner or two or three. Should we have our addict here because they're going to want to drink too? And
Mhm.
there's a lot of what ifs and what should we do and how should we do it. But I think a rule of thumb is that if you don't have to have the pot or the booze or the whatever
Mhm.
when the addict is with you, I think that's a really respectful, kind thing to do for the addict who's trying to recover.
Yeah. And along those lines, the addict, and in your experience, coming out of it, and getting sober, they're going to lose some of the friends they thought they had, or the group they used to hang. There's going to be changes, right? If they're
Yeah,
not in that life anymore and they really change. Is that accurate?
it is accurate, and it's a very difficult thing for people who really are making the choice to not use or drink, especially that.
Yeah.
I think gaming is another one that's really difficult because people meet each other online that way and form relationships, but the gaming lasts all night and nobody can work or go to school or do anything productive in society if they're gaming all night.
Is that
So
something in would you
yeah,
see with
there's
adults? Because I heard that's just with kids. I don't know anything about it. Do you find adults that have that?
yeah, it can happen with adults. and
Really?
and then of course adults, they get into porn and they watch that all night.
Okay.
And you know addiction is cunning, baffling, and powerful, as they say in the 12-step programs. And pretty much anything can be an addiction.
Right.
If it's really interfering with your life, then you've got a problem.
Yeah. I see.
Yeah,
All right, that's a good question. What else do you got, Mr. Producer? Good, anonymous. That was a good one.
All right,
that was a really good one.
Yeah.
we have our next anonymous here wants to know: should an addict avoid drinking alcohol during recovery, even if they weren't addicted to it in the first place?
Mm. Oh, I like that
Is
question.
that like a functional
So
type
second
person?
anonymous, yeah, I like that question. So I just want to say hi to our second anonymous caller. Um, I was not addicted to alcohol. And the reason I wasn't addicted to alcohol is because every time I drank, it hurt my stomach, my
Oh,
intestines. But here's the thing. I mean, if I didn't have my drugs, if I ran out of pills or I didn't have enough pot, and at that point you couldn't just dial the dealer to come to you, I had to go get it. Um, if I didn't have if I didn't have what I wanted, then I would drink,
oh
even
wow.
though it
Even
was
though it would hurt.
oh so painful. But it was painful physically that way, but emotionally, once my brain was kind of doused in it, then everything felt better,
Uh-huh.
right? So here's the deal. Alcohol is a drug. It's a liquid drug, and legal and approved of and societally approved of for a very long time. So people think it's okay to drink. It's not okay to drink if you're an addict in recovery. If you're, it's interesting because there are two different sets of 12-step programs. There's Narcotics Anonymous for the drugs.
Right.
There's Alcoholics Anonymous for the alcohol. It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
And in some Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, it's called a blue card meeting, and they read from the blue card and they say, you are not to talk about drugs in this meeting. You're limited to talking about alcohol, which I think is crazy, but that's just my opinion.
Wow.
In Narcotics Anonymous, they talk about anything that's mind altering. Alcohol is mind altering. All of these drugs are mind altering. That's why people use them.
Right.
So if you've got an addict in your life who was maybe addicted to opiates or cocaine or drugs, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
things we think of as drugs, and is telling you that it's okay for them to drink because they weren't addicted to it, I say no to that.
Okay.
I call BS on that.
Yeah.
Because alcohol is addictive. It's a drug. And if the addict in your life stops using all those other drugs, but just uses alcohol, guess what's going to happen? They're going to get addicted to the alcohol.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope. If they're really dedicated to being in recovery, then they need to be abstinent and find out what's going on for them underneath the addiction. What is the pain? Why do I need to cover myself up with this stuff?
Yeah. Why trade
That's
one
what
for
needs
the
to
other?
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. It doesn't work. You can, you can try. You can try it. You can use all kinds of mental excuses for it,
Yeah.
but
Tell us
it
how that
isn't going to
works.
work.
Tell us how that works out. Yeah.
Yeah. Good
That's a
luck
great
with that.
question. Good luck with that. Yeah, that's a great
Yeah.
question. Thank you for that. But I want to piggyback on top of that question. How do you feel about, say you have an alcoholic and the alcoholic switches over to these non-alcoholic drinks? I think they make a beer,
Yep.
which is a non-alcoholic, but it has like a point, whatever. How do you feel
Yeah.
about that?
A
Is
very,
that,
very small.
yeah. How do you feel about the use of those when you're in trying to get rid of
In
alcohol?
recovery?
In recovery, yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence with that one. I know that people, you see, drugs are a little different. You don't love the taste of a drug. I mean, you can sometimes jones for the taste of a drug, like heroin or something, but you're not taking a drug for the flavor of the drug. You're taking the drug for
The head
to be
change or
able to get
whatever.
away from life.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be mind altered. With alcohol, sometimes it's different. I never drank enough alcohol to really. Scotch was my drink, and I hated the taste of it. Go figure. That's what I would drink. I hated it, but after the first one, the second one tasted a little better. um, but I think if there's, if people just love being able to have a beer with a hamburger or on a sunny day at the barbecue, whatever, that's I think it's okay to have a non-alcoholic beer. It isn't completely totally non-alcoholic. There's like a teeny tiny bit of alcohol in them. It would take so many of those beers to get somebody drunk.
Right.
I mean, there's just not enough alcohol. That person would not even be able to drink enough and take enough liquid into their bodies to be able to be really affected by that kind of amount of alcohol. So I think it's okay as long as the person understands that there could be a lead back.
It could be a lead
they
back to
have to
drinking
be,
that beer.
yeah, it could be a lead back, and I think they'd want to be careful about that, and maybe be accountable for that, and maybe if they have a counselor, let their counselor know, or let somebody know that they've had that, and not use it as just a free get out of jail free card kind of
Right.
thing.
Right. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
curious to see what you'd say about that. Well, another great show,
Yeah, I'm
Candace
on the
Plus.
fence.
Yeah, and that's I've heard from people who know what they're talking about, like yourself, and that's one that you really can't nail down. I wonder what's scarier, if you're doing it while in recovery, or if you have 5 years of time underneath your belt, and then you think that you're gonna have a no duels. I don't know
Okay.
what's scarier.
Well, do I have a minute to
Yeah,
just
yeah,
address
sure,
that?
sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, these shows go so fast.
I know.
So if you're 5 years into recovery, for example, and you're not doing the inner work it takes to find out why you used the stuff in the first place, then you're definitely a candidate for relapse.
Good point.
Because as soon as something goes wrong, without self-awareness and without that determination and that having made that decision to stay clean, it's over, you're just going to go back to it. Life is just too hard. But if you're 5 years into it, I mean, I know that I need to take care of myself every day, even at 35 years clean and sober. If I have a therapist that I talk to because I believe everybody needs a therapist, especially therapists. You know, we all need somebody to talk to. We all need that. That's part of, I think, the human condition. And I work on myself all the time. If something comes up that I'm not dealing with well, I'm gonna look at what I need to do about that. Because if I don't, even at 35 years, I'm a candidate for relapse.
Scary.
And I don't want that.
Right. Right.
So I don't want that. So I do what it takes to not do that. And that's the decision. I don't want that.
Got it.
It's a different thing than saying, I can't do that. I can't drink and I can't use. I don't want to drink and I don't want to use.
Yeah. That's a difference.
I mean, maybe some days when it's really sunny and beautiful, I'd like to go to the beach and smoke a joint. Who wouldn't? But I choose not to do it.
It's a choice.
And that's the
Again.
difference. Because it isn't the first one we pick up, it's the one after that. We give ourselves permission to pick up the next one if we pick up the first one.
Got it. Wow. Such great points and experience, and talking to us real and honest. That's why I love your program, Candace, and I love what you're doing.
Oh, thanks, Casey.
So it's always a
Yeah.
pleasure when you
Thank
come
you.
on Fridays. But let me give you the last word here. I know we're out of time. We're past time. Don't get mad at me. And let us know how to get a hold of you, please.
Yeah. Okay, lovewithboundaries.com. Fill in our questionnaire if you want to have the free 30-minute consultation. We'd love to hear from you. And, you know, whatever point you are with this, if you're a loved one or an addict and you want help. And the thing that I would say is, please, as a loved one, please don't give up on your addict, because there are things you can do that you probably haven't tried yet. And we will help you with that. And if you're an addict thinking, oh, I've tried so hard to give it up and I keep going back to it, let us help you. We can help you with that.
Got it.
We know what that's like.
The one and only Miss Candace Plattor. Thank you so much. And
thanks,
I'll
Casey.
speak to you next Friday. Have a great weekend. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.